Hey everyone, we are live. I'm Ben Dietrich of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society of America, and I am joined by a special guest, Greg Swartz, director of the new Water of Life film. Greg, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
This is like the most anticlimactic intro we've ever had. We should have done some thematics or a grand entrance, but we just appear on the screen. So
I don't have any special effects set up.
Yeah. As a director and film producer, you would expect that. But anyway, good to have you here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Got a really special evening planned if you're watching this live, and of course, if you're watching the replay tomorrow, Thursday or Friday, welcome as well. Greg and I are going to have a nice discussion about the Water of Life film. You've probably heard a lot about it. We've been bringing, I think, a lot of attention to the film. Brand new, I think, and really big deal for the whiskey industry at large. And this one in particular is focusing on independent bottlers, which, of course, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society of America, or rather the society at large, very much is. So great film. I don't want to take it away from Greg. He's going to talk about it. We'll get into some whiskeys tonight and give you a chance to ask some questions for Greg. Anything you want to know from an actual film producer and director, and actually quite the whiskey expert, as I understand it.
I don't want to. Is there a test? I'm not prepared.
The test is when we were talking before we went live here of like what whiskey should we pour. You pulled out 3, and I think that is the test right there. You've passed. You're a whiskey expert. So, welcome, Greg. Thanks for being here. Good to have you.
Good to have you.
So, cheers. Let's. Oh, you already have a whiskey in your glass. I'm gonna pour
I do.
My glass. Hold on, because we're a little giddy right now. So tell us, Greg, just to kick off, tell us about the film. This is, as I understand it, your second film. The Water of Life was a big deal. Maybe if you don't mind sharing us a little bit about your background, what got you into this, and are you sure?
So the whole project kind of began, I guess, 30 years ago. And what I mean by that is I was an exchange student in Glasgow when I was in university. And so I spent a year there where I was introduced to the world of whiskey. And I won't lie and say that I was appreciating whiskey as a 19-year-old, but I was drinking it.
Yeah.
So that was, and trying to appreciate it. And one of the things I'm quite proud of from the whiskey side is that I was in the Bon Accord very, very, very early on. My first real whiskey tasting I ever went to was in the early 90s in the Bon Accord before like Paul and his son owned it.
Yeah.
And so I got to taste whiskeys from all over Scotland in a city, literally it was a region by region tasting. And then fast forward until 2017, my wife had never been to Scotland. It was our 10th anniversary. And we went there for our 10th anniversary. And it was on that trip that I had the idea to make the first film. And then that became its own behemoth. And then the second thing came about literally as a joke that the editor and I said, oh, we have so much amazing stuff about independent bottlers and we have to stay under 90 minutes to get this on PBS. So we were like, what do we do with this? And we were like, well, let's make another movie out of it. And then that became a 4-part series instead of another movie because we wanted, part of that was just literally calculated because that's what the industry favors right now is docuseries, shorter chunks of more bite-sized content. But it could have just as easily been another feature-length film, but we chopped it up, which gave us a little more leeway to add some stuff. And so that's been the last couple of years, and it really just grew out of having shot a week at Gordon and MacPhail, and then used 3 minutes of the footage.
Yeah.
And then we wound up including the final tally is there are 43 different independent bottlers featured in the series.
That's amazing. I mean, I know the societies obviously feature pretty heavily, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think, listen, I know a lot of people watching this have probably seen the film already. If you haven't, there's a link below. We haven't been shy about this, but obviously we're celebrating the festival season this month at the society, and we have a pretty cool deal going right now. If you order any society bottling for the festival season, in the link below, you get actually free access to watch the film. So that's the business side of things that I'll get out of the way, but it's a pretty cool deal. We've had a lot of great feedback from members who've actually picked up a bottle and have opened it while watching the film, which has been pretty amazing to see. So we'll show a little clip later on about it, but again, there's a link below if you actually want to watch it and you haven't already. So, Greg, I thought it was interesting, and curious to hear your thoughts, just how independent bottlers have evolved over time. There's one part in the film, and I won't quote it specifically, where someone was talking about how it used to be the case that independent bottlers were viewed as sort of like the knockoff Rolex. Like it wasn't the real deal. I think that was the quote, something about a knockoff Rolex.
Yeah, yeah,
like
Mark
Lidler,
Lidler.
the real deal.
Or
And
Arthur
now,
Motley, yeah.
Is that who it was? Okay. And now it's considered to be like the ultimate show of quality in whiskey, in contrast. I mean, did you see it that way? Like when you started, obviously if you were inspired to make this film, but has that been your perspective? And I'm curious to know how long.
Well, I think I was introduced to independent bottling pretty early on. And so I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. And I knew that to me, it's always been a way of experimenting with a whiskey that you haven't had before. You know, I may not know this new brand here. This perfect example, the whiskey I'm drinking right now is 149.12 Farmers Market Sophistication, which is a relatively recent outturn.
Yeah.
This is a whiskey that comes from Ardnamurchan. Merkin. Now, a lot of people won't have had that yet. So this is a great way. And it was always that way for me. That's always what I did. I remember the first Glen Tauchers I ever had was an SMWS bottling. You know, it was just a new way into other whiskey. But I definitely think that there was a sense that other people thought that this was like, oh, it's like the knockoff Rolex thing. But I certainly have. People haven't said that to me, but I've heard conversations about it, and you know, I think the people that with making this film that I've been surrounded with know better. So
yeah, that's always amazed me too. I mean, listen, I was a member of the society. Obviously, I've been here on this side of the things for about 7 years now, but I was really attracted to the idea that you can there's like, you know, now over 150 distilleries. There's more than that, but there are a lot of distilleries in Scotland that are making amazing spirit that we just don't get in the U.S. And it was it was like the best avenue for me to try whiskey from distilleries that I'd never even heard of. I mean, I couldn't even pronounce at the time too. But that's really fascinating, you know. And I'm excited. People are. I mean, obviously, I'm excited. I'm here, and you made the film about it. But I'm just excited that people are turned on to that. Like that perception's changed. You know,
there's a line in our interview with Mark Lidler that is not in the film. It took too long, but it's something that's relevant to this. So I'll paraphrase it here, where he said, "So many of these distilleries were built to be component makers for blends, and then all of a sudden they've discovered through independent bottlings that they are very much an in-demand thing on their own." And he said, "Imagine." This is the metaphor he came up with. He said, "Imagine that you make mufflers for cars. And then someday out of the blue, you find out that the mufflers you're making are more in demand than the car is that it goes into." And he said, you have to completely change your thinking. Everything about it is different, you know, that people do want to try this muffler.
Yeah, that is amazing. Well, I'm curious, what have you know, in your process of making the film, was there anything, did any of your perspectives change? Did you learn anything that you thought, wow, that's really changed how I view independent bottlers altogether?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, if it did,
I should say, you know, throughout the process.
Well, I think it happened so slowly, I maybe didn't notice it. But, you know, well, I mean, first of all, one of the things that's been interesting to me is, you know, there was a kind of a moment, and there still is a moment of single cask. But now that moment, I think, has gotten wider. That hasn't gone away. There's a huge taste and an appetite for single casks that are unique and amazing. But now there's so many independent bottlers that are doing blended malts. They're doing blends. They're becoming sort of more mature themselves and like having a full portfolio of different styles. Some of them are doing peated and unpeated. You know, like they're becoming, their thinking is becoming that of, you know, a complete business.
Yeah, and
that's been interesting. And then we've also interviewed some of the ones that are so damn new that they've only released, you know, 4 or 5 casks so far.
Yeah, and the film I know gets into. There's some comments about just the business of independent bottlers in general, like today, and how difficult it is. And so I mean, you said there are 43 featured, and how many of those would you say have opened within the last 5 years?
I'd say 4 or 5.
Yeah, it's just not many.
I mean, we tried that, but that's artificial. That's just our choice. I wanted to do a cross section as best I could, old and new, big and small, Scotland and outside of Scotland.
Yeah.
You know, ones that have, like, you know, the SMWS, perfect example, a very unique business model. You know, it's a society. It actually is a society. Like it's its own thing that's so much bigger than just a bottler. Where, you know, so we wanted to create a good cross section, and we picked a handful of brand new ones.
Yeah, let's Well, first of all, I want to pour whiskey because I poured a little one. Greg and I, right before we went live, he went through his little selection. He had 3 bottles in front of him. One that he said he just got delivered today. And it's the one bottle I had in front of me. And it's actually relevant to what you were just saying. So this is pretty cool. You haven't tried it. You can see that I clearly have tried this one. And Tom and I don't know if you met Tom, my colleague, but we tried it together, and I've shared this with quite a few friends. But so this is called The Wandering. It is, sorry, my camera has like this retina focus thing, so I don't think I can actually show the label here, but beautiful label. This is a blended malt. And yeah, we are kind of starting very off-piste for the society because most of the whiskeys we put out are single cask. But this is a blended malt made from whiskey from all 5 regions of Scotland, and that was intentional in honor of the festival season, which is a sort of a celebration of the Scotch whiskey producing regions. So 10-year-old, and it's a cask strength whiskey still. It's a blended malt, but it's cask strength 58.4%. And unfortunately, as much as we like to know everything about our whiskey and where it comes from, the origin is actually a mystery of the casks. So for better or worse, we call this our heresy series, these blended malts, and it's kind of a fun little collection. But we're getting your first impression, so
I'm gonna have to hold off for a minute because I'm not done with this other dram yet, and I only have the one glass here in front of me. So, but that's okay. I just don't want to rush this because I really, really love this dram.
Well, how about this? Let's show a little bit. Well, I guess this isn't really a clips of the film, but you had made this little trailer which features the Scotch Malt Whisky Society as well. I'm going to put it up. I'll play that for everybody. You can watch this. This will be, I think, about 3 minutes long. In that time, Greg is going to chug his cask strength dram, and then we'll be ready for. I'm just kidding. There's no rush. But anything you want to say before we play this? I mean, you know it. Obviously, you made it.
Well, so one of the things we did with the structure of the film is each episode, there's 4 episodes. They're all about a half an hour long. And each episode features a handful of bottlers that represent that part of the story. And so the main bottler that's featured throughout episode 2 is the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. And that's for a number of reasons. It's just chronologically a good fit because we kind of talk about things coming out of the whiskey lock and the rise of new whiskey, and that was sort of the birth of the SMWS in the early 80s. And, it was a perfect time for it. So what we've done is when we've done a couple of events, like with you guys, we've done a cut, we've made a sort of special little trailer about that storyline specifically. And so this is the first one that we made. And this is, I think, the first one we're showing online. There's a couple other ones that are made, but you guys are up first. So I hope everyone enjoys it. And there's some stuff in it that's not in the film. So
I didn't even ask your permission. I don't even know if this is kosher, but you're here and we're playing it and we're drinking whiskey. So there's
oh yeah,
here it is.
There were some really pessimistic times in the 80s.
Distilleries were closing all over the place.
They didn't know what to do about it.
In 1983, Philip Hills, known as Pip, managed to get a hold of a single cask of Glenfarclas.
I spoke to a lot of my chums, and we decided to form a syndicate to purchase that single cask.
The legend is they brought it back to Edinburgh, strapped to the roof of his Aston Martin Lagonda. Now, I don't think that could possibly have happened, but that is a legend. When he got back to Edinburgh,
we tried it, and everyone was agreed that this was absolutely wonderful whiskey.
As the crowd grew, as it were, Pip decided that wouldn't it be good if we had a formal arrangement here?
So he built his own club in order to provide it to him and his friends, and we ended up with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society.
It was impossible to avoid the conclusion that people didn't seem, by and large, to be able to obtain it anywhere else.
Single malt was very much rarer than it is now. Single cask was almost unheard of.
I said to the members of my syndicate, look guys, this is surely a market which isn't being supplied by nobody.
In the middle of a whisky recession, distilleries are worried about the future. Will the society be harmful to us? Will it be helpful to us?
Distilleries were sitting on a vast trove of the finest distilled liquor on the planet, and we were the only people who were mining it.
The industry was very suspicious about the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. They were nervous. One of the reasons they were able to support them was they never declared what the whisky was. They gave them numbers.
The very first bottling was 1.1. Distillery 1 was Glenfarclas. Bottle number 1.
Number 2.1 was Glenlivet. Number 3.1 was from Beaumont. And so it went on.
What we discovered many years later was that when we bottle a new distillery and a society member enjoys that new number, when he finds out which distillery it was, a huge percentage of them were tempted to go and buy a bottle of the branded version in order to compare the single cask with the proprietary bottle. Force for good. So the distilleries realised that we actually were bringing whisky lovers to the wider table. The society is a family of whisky lovers in over 30 countries around the world.
What I wanted was ordinary folk who liked good drink to participate in what was Scotland's finest product.
All right. Well done, Greg. So
Thank you.
That's a little trailer of, as you mentioned, I think the second part of the film. You can call them chapters or parts, or what's your?
Yeah, I like to call them chapters, but episodes is really
chapter 2. Well, trailer of chapter 2. Yeah, amazing. I mean, obviously, you're familiar with it. I'm familiar with the story. We don't have to dwell too much on just the origin and the past, but it is just every time I hear that story, I think about how amazing it is that I think so many of us take for granted that like we have all this single cask strength whiskey around us, and like the plethora of different whiskeys that are available in the market. And I wasn't around that time, but just how it was so different back then. So also, I just want to say I am in your film, Greg. There is a portion where my hand is actually pouring a bottle, and I think you have my index finger and thumb in screen. So therefore, I would like some sort of extra credit, for really working hard to make your movie success.
Do you know what's funny is I'm in the film and I didn't realize it for months. One day I have I'll hold this up. I have a very distinct wedding ring that has a band through the middle of it, right? Yeah, you can see it's a gold band that just runs through the middle of the silver, right? And one day we were looking at this extreme close-up and we just saw this shot of this hand doing this, and I noticed the ring and I thought, wait a minute. And then I realized that you could see a shirt in the background, and it was a shirt that it was a blue shirt I owned. I was like, wait a minute, that's me. I had no idea. It was just a detail of a hand and a whiskey. So,
well, so
that's my Hitchcock moment.
So 2 questions. I mean, how do you? Okay, obviously, first of all, speak freely. Don't just because I'm with the society and so many of us. But like, how do you see the society as in the realm of independent bottlers today? Like the role it plays. Obviously, we talked a lot about the origins. It's not the first independent bottler, of course, but by far the largest today. How do you see its place in everything?
Well, I mean, to me, it's unique. It's utterly unique. And, I've been a member for, I don't know, years now. And, I live walking distance to the Tam O'Shanter. I can, most importantly, I can walk home from the Tam O'Shanter, which I've done many, many times. Yeah. And so I've been going to SMWS events there. So it's always just been, as much as anything, it's been a club that I belong to. And then, I never spent much time in any of the members' rooms because I wasn't in the UK. And then we started making the film, and we shot in both places in Edinburgh. And then Roy's interview that you saw a little bit of there, Roy Duff, that was interviewed in the Glasgow members' rooms. So then it's just, I've never been in the London members' rooms, but it's become a regular. The first time I went there was with Roy for that interview, and when we got there, he showed his membership card at the door, and I stopped him and I said, "Please, let me show my membership card because I just want to use it. I just want to show it." So, it's, to me, it's also, like I said earlier, it's a really great way. For me, I've always used it as a way to try new distilleries, sometimes even more than distilleries that I like. I love Glenfarclas. I have 18 bottles I have 18 SMWS bottles right now, and I'll bet you 4 of them are Glenfarclas bottles.
Oh yeah, wow.
But most of the time I use it to try new distilleries and new places or new takes on things that I haven't tried otherwise. And a lot of times, like the third bottle that I have here, the one that I have from the Gathering that we talked about.
Yeah, the Glenrothes.
I tell people all the time, that is the best Glenrothes I've ever tasted in my life, bar none, no hesitation.
Yeah. We had a run of casks from them. It was I think we said it was a few years ago, like 2023 bottling.
Yeah, I think it was either 2022 or 23 Gathering. Yeah. It was. And I remember it was the same year. One of the other ones was the Lafroig, which I also bought, but that's gone.
Yeah, those were. I mean, those Glenrothes casks are just so. I mean, I love the whiskey that the distillery puts out too, but it's just a different presentation. Most of it's more of a commercial bottle in strength. It's the whole package. It's targeting a broader consumer. I think is a brand. But the whiskey's amazing, and those sherry casks are phenomenal. Spanish oak sherry butts have been a lot of members have told us over the years, like their favorite casks have been 30 point something, have been fantastic. Did you pour the Wandering?
I did.
Let's talk about that real quick. Okay, guys, we got to deviate. Two whiskey nerds have to come together for a moment. And not just so this is it. So the Wandering, it's a blend. What do you think? First impressions.
Well, first of all, I forgot that I forgot that I'd poured it, and I was drinking the other one, and then I just sipped it now.
Yeah,
sort of absentmindedly, and the peat kind of was like, and but in a good way. It's funny. I can really taste I'm not going to lie. I don't have a palate where I can say I can taste all 5 regions. It's a chord, but I can absolutely taste beyond. It's clearly not just an Islay whiskey. Mm-hmm. It's not just a peated. It's not just a Kalila or whatever it might be. It is, and that's not to belittle that. I'm just saying there's a lot more going on here. It's really lovely.
I wish I could speak to the ratio of cask and of origin and whatnot, but typically it's clearly can't be 20%, 20%, 20. 5 equal parts because you have a peated Islay cask will just dominate everything. I've learned just from fun and home blending different whiskeys together. You have a little bit of that Campbelltown funk. There's a funkiness to it, a little bit of iodine.
And there's that Highland note that you kind of get. It's almost like you get from like a Benromic, where there's that there's that sort of heathery peat, but with a little bit of honey. How many bottles of this are there? So you can kind of usually it doesn't say.
I mean, I could tell you.
I'm just curious because you can usually reverse engineer how many casks went into it. Like,
yeah, I mean, I could also find out and but we have a few hundred bottles in the US alone, so I would be surprised if it was less than six casks, at least. Okay. I mean that probably more than that.
There's that kind of a licorice note, like an anise note, that it didn't hit me at first, but I've got it now, and I quite like it. I'm
actually reading the tasting note, which I really try to avoid reading our tasting notes while I'm tasting myself. I just feel like
I do it afterwards.
Yeah, but now that I'm reading it, it says we've detected deep and enticing notes of soft heathery peat smoke. I feel like anytime you see heather written out like that to describe peat, it's Highland Park. Like that's a subtle nod of saying this is Highland Park. I don't necessarily taste that, but I do pick that up a little bit.
It's funny. There's a note to this, and it's almost a mezcal note to me. it has that sort of spiciness that has a kind of a minted quality to it. That I think what it is actually it's that kind of earthy funk mixed with peat. That's the sort of that smokiness I get from some mezcals that
I've just added a little bit of water to it, and it still retained really good texture, which I love.
Mm.
I struggle sometimes tasting our whiskeys, like on this channel, because I just know that I sound so biased. But I try to remind everybody I'm here because I was in love with the whiskeys first. Like I was a member, and when we
were filming the movie, we were at Charlie McLean's house filming him.
Oh wow, yeah.
And I'll boil a long story down to a very short anecdote where he basically said someone had once told him that there are whiskeys that belong on the dining room table, and there are whiskeys that belong in the shed with the guns and the animals. And he said, but that's not a pejorative. That doesn't mean that whiskey's any worse. It's just a rugged. It's a rugged outdoor. It's an outdoor whiskey, is what he said. And I feel like this is an outdoor whiskey. It's the kind of whiskey you want to put on a coat and go out and rake some leaves. You know what I mean? It has a sort of a, and I've always loved that. We've actually nicknamed one of our members of our team Outdoor Whiskey because he was always not there when we were trying whiskeys, and he was always outside because he was our drone pilot, and so he was always off. Yeah. And he was always out shooting the drone and missing the best whiskeys, and so we nicknamed him Outdoor Whiskey based on that story. And I'm going to tell him I found an outdoor whiskey for you.
There you go. I mean, it's by the way, the shots were amazing. The whole production, I was really impressed. Obviously, it's not your first rodeo. I'm curious. Obviously, this being your second film, what did you do differently, if anything? I mean, obviously, the subject matter is so different, but just as a filmmaker yourself, like what did you?
Well, about 20 to 25% of the film is footage from the original shoot. It really did. The idea of it saying we have this extra footage, let's use it. That carried over, and we used that. And Alphonse, our drone pilot producer, he shoots an insane amount of footage. And what we did when we were shooting the film is we actually rented a separate car for him, and we would send him off. He was usually a day behind us, not physically. We would all stay in the same place. Scotland's not that big, but he would go to locations that we'd been at the day before, and then we would say, oh, yesterday we talked to so-and-so and they talked about this, and this, go shoot that. And so he would then go the next day and shoot B-roll of either the stuff in the distillery or more often than not the drone stuff. And so he had his own separate kind of unit, if you will. And so that produced a ton of footage we didn't use. And a lot of the B-roll that you see is all from him. The interview stuff was me and so I co-directed the second one with Guy Satchwell. Guy was the sound mixer on the first film, but he co-directed the second film with me because he was in Scotland. So anytime we had to do an interview at last minute that I couldn't do, he would do it. Mm-hmm. And if it was here, I would do it. Or occasionally I would do it if I were there. But there were plenty of interviews that he did on his own. And so we really, really kind of had to scramble to get enough footage to cover some of the stories that we wanted to tell. And we leaned heavily into the bottlers saying, you saw footage in the clip you just saw. We wrote to Whisky, the SMWS, and said, hey, we have John McShane telling the story of Pip Hills, but we need some photos to go with it. And they sent us photos
That's amazing, though. I mean, yeah, I recognize some of the clips. Obviously, a lot was new. So if it had like a slightly different vibe from the first one, I put that. It felt like it was really polished overall.
Well, I will also tell you the second one definitely is a little bit more made for geeks like us, as opposed to the first one had no assumption of knowledge of whiskey. It was meant to be an introduction to whiskey, which is why PBS wanted to air it nationally.
Yeah.
Whereas this one assumes a little bit. This one doesn't go into barley, water, yeast, and thyme, and wood, and this, and 3 years, and all that. We don't. This assumes you've seen the first one. So that was the big difference.
It was so funny when you released. Well, the first one was released. So many friends, family members, a lot of people sent me that, like, "Hey Ben," they consider I'm like the whiskey guy in the family, obviously. So like, oh, you should watch it. You're gonna love this. Like, so many people were sending that to me. So meaning, and these are people who don't dislike whiskey, but really don't know anything about whiskey. They were really excited. Like, this was really cool. I learned a lot. Check it out. So that tells me you were reaching like a lot of people, you know, in that audience. But
Well,
yeah, definitely.
That's
What-
good. We worked really hard to do that.
So what's your aspirations? I think for the second one now that it's been released, and I mean, kind of take us through. You did a screening initially, I think, in Edinburgh, right? That was the first one, the premiere.
Yeah, we premiered. Well, we launched our own festival. You know, we co-launched a festival called the Independent Spirits Festival, which I'm happy to say we'll be repeating next year.
Yeah,
and the Scotch Malt Whisky Society was a partner in that because we had. It's funny that the room was measured out and evaluated for size, and there were 2 oversized areas that were bars, and that we were going to use as, you know, bigger partners. And the SMWS the first day was like, yeah, we want that one.
yeah,
And then the other thing is that the other perfect fit for it was that it's walking distance from the vaults, and you know, it was in Leith, and that was where we did the premiere. We did some amazing events in March. It was just incredible. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Other than the births of my children, it was one of the most, like, I went up in the balcony during the Independent Spirits Fest and looked at this hall that was just throbbing with people.
yeah.
And I stood up there and I was like, we made this. And I was so excited. Like, it was even, well, it was proud. I was proud of it, sure. But in addition, so many of us did it that it wasn't just me. It was far from just me. It was 12 of us at least. But it was like, it was such a cool moment to see this. And I was like, this is, you know, I've always had such a love affair with Scotland since I was a teenager. And to come back there and do that was absolutely incredible. And so that was the big first thing. And then now what we're doing is some of these one-off special events, online stuff with you guys. We've done some theatrical things. We're going to do some other theatrical things. We're going to do some stuff with you guys, I think, in the fall with some movie theaters that have tastings and liquor licenses, so we can do tastings at the theater. Because the pandemic with the first film, it was literally the pandemic that forced us to realize that whiskey pairs really well with our movies, and in a cool way. Like, you can have fun with it, where it's like, oh, do you want to try the whiskey that this random person on screen is talking about? Well, guess what? Open up dram number 3 in your kit. It's right in front of you. And so that was fun. I mean,
That's cool.
I always tell the story that the biggest screening we've ever done, we were at the Hopscotch Festival in Vancouver, Canada. There were 700 people in the room, and they all had tasting kits paired. We created dram cues where little color-coded cues come up in the corner of the screen: red, blue, purple, yellow. That way we can change out what the whiskey is, but we can also, you don't have to read in the dark. It's just red, blue. Yeah, you just have to see the color. And one of those drams was an Octomore. And so I'm in the back of the theater. There's 700 people there, and the dram comes up, the queue comes up for Octomore, and 700 people open a miniature, and instantly I'm on Isla because 700 peated whiskeys just got opened at once.
That's crazy.
And it was like the whole theater just smelled like peat, like that. And it gave me goosebumps. It gives me goosebumps right now. Just,
oh man!
We're doing more of that. That's it. We're going to do more of that with independent bottlers.
I was rewatching the film the other day. Like, I think I saw it for the first time almost 2 months ago, and I was like, I'm going to rewatch it, and obviously in preparation for our discussion today, and just see if there's anything I missed. Second viewing, and I halfway through the first part, I'm like, this is so. Why don't I have a whiskey in my hand? Like, watching this, it was like I felt so unnatural to be watching it without a whiskey in front of me, and so I immediately poured it. It was great. Anyway, I mentioned earlier, I've seen a lot of members posting on our Discord server and social as well, people watching the films because they order the society bottling for the festivals and got the free access to watch it. It's been pairing quite nicely. So to I think firm up what you said earlier, and we haven't really announced this officially, but we will be doing a series of screening events for society members in September. And it's going to be a whole long thing. It's like over a week, I think, of like every single night, all different cities across the U.S. So we'll be premiering it in theaters with whiskeys. So it will be a full-on tasting and viewing experience, which will be cool. So excited for that.
I love the day we came up with the dram cues was born out of necessity, but it was, I think all the best ideas usually are. They're not just whimsical ideas. And it was just, it fits so perfectly.
Yeah.
Even better, like I'm working on I'm about 3.5 months away from premiering a new film about the history of beer and culture in Germany.
Oh, you are?
And We've already shot that. That's being edited right now.
Okay.
And it's a similar style film, but it's about Bavarian beer, but it's specifically about Franconian beer.
Oh,
and the cool thing, the reason we picked Franconia is because 99%, it has the most breweries per capita of any place on the planet, and almost all of them don't export their beers even to other parts of Germany, let alone around the world. You have to go to the brewery to try the beer.
Oh, I had no idea. I mean, I know the culture is amazing, but I had no idea that exists in that fashion.
It's this weird, like, kind of throwback. It's like Outlander. It's like this kind of step into time. Not the technology. I just mean the sort of like they won't pasteurize the beer, so therefore the beer's not shelf stable for longer than 90 days. So you have to buy it at the brewery.
Yeah.
But most of the breweries are also restaurants. So there's actually now hiking trails that connect them all. And you can go on these hikes and go to 5 breweries in a hike and have you could build a meal. You can have a sort of some nuts or pretzels at the first one, and then an appetizer, and then an entree, and then you could do this hike.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm bringing that up is that, we discovered that the queue idea doesn't work as well with beer as it does with whiskey, because especially a German beer where it's going to be a half a liter or a liter. And they're 6 minutes apart. No one's drinking. I don't want anyone drinking, 12 liters of beer during the course of a movie.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, okay, I'll have to ask now that you mentioned it. So what's next on your wish list? I mean, what are you pursuing after that? I mean, I'm sure you have.
So the plan has always been to make a series of films called The Water of Life. And it's always going to be different whiskey. That's the Water of Life brand is saved for the whiskey stuff. And this is the second. Independent Spirits is the second one. We are developing 3 more at the moment. We are developing one about American whiskey, and I won't say bourbon or single malt. It's just American whiskey because it's a broader scope than that. Irish whiskey, which I can tell you why in a second, which is kind of funny, and Indian whiskey, Indian single malt. Eventually, we'll get to Tasmania. We'll get to Japan. We'll get to Taiwan. We'll get to other whiskey markets, but we picked a couple because I used to live in Ireland, and I have a family I'm very good friends with, the whole family in Ireland, and they were absolutely furious at me that I didn't make the first film about Irish whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
So I promised them, I was like, I'll get there. I promise I'll get there. So that's we've already started shooting a little bit of that, not much, but a little bit. And then Indian whiskey is going to be a sort of birth of a new market, which is, the funny thing is, India is the biggest whiskey market on the planet.
Yeah.
And
producer, right?
And the overwhelming majority of whiskey in India wouldn't be considered whiskey outside of India.
Right.
But there are some really great single malts there, and I'm not doing Japan right now because friends of mine are already making a film about Japanese whiskey. And I'm just sort of giving them their lane, but I'll get there eventually. I've got my own ideas for some stories, and I've talked to some other people there. So, but we'll get there. So that's, we're going to keep making films about whiskey as long as the industry will have us.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt what you've done has been so good for the Scotch whiskey industry. Like I would only imagine you're welcome with open arms by everyone. I mean, it's been such a positive.
Well, thank you.
Project. I mean, so.
I have a like I said, I have a love affair with Scotland, and I have so many good friends there, and I've had such a great time. And but it's going to be time to do some other whiskey related stuff, and including, like I said, American whiskey. That's coming up, and I've been to Kentucky twice now to sort of do some research, and also done some American single malt exploration. Exploration means I'm drinking whiskey, so it's not exactly working in a salt mine.
It's a hard job. We all have to do it. All right, I want to be conscious of your time, Greg, but I do have 2 questions. One is great. We have to ask everybody: what is your favorite society whiskey of all time? What was it, and where were you? Don't think, just answer. What comes to your mind first?
Cherry Blossom Petit Four.
All right, what is that? I don't know.
Cherry Blossom Petit Four was a UK SMWS UK release, maybe about 4 years ago. It's a Dalhousie. It was my introduction to Dalhousie.
Okay. And
if anyone who knows my whiskey habits, I'm a huge Dalhousie fan now, and that whiskey turned me into one.
Oh, there you go.
And my buddy Keith, who's one of our co-producers on the new film, he lives in Leith, and when I turned him on to that whiskey, and then he went to the vault. He got us each a second bottle before it was gone.
Oh, fantastic. You
It's
still have it?
no.
Okay.
I loved it way too much. And I didn't want the heel to take a chance of oxidizing. I just was like, when we made the first film, Rachel Barry gave us some advice. Was doing a live thing like this with us one night, and she gave everybody some advice, and I loved it. And she said, you can't hold on to those whiskeys forever, but all you have to do is have enough faith that another one's going to come along that's going to just as aggressively grab your imagination and your heart. Something else will replace it. So I tend not to lean into them for too long. So that whiskey's gone.
Yeah.
But like you can see, for example, here, this is the Taste of Home. This is the Glen Rothes we were talking about. There's this much left, so I'm gonna have to start getting busy on this one because I do quite love this one. But Cherry Blossom Petit Four is my favorite, at least so far. But my goal is to try 1.1.
Oh.
I haven't done it yet.
I think there was one open a couple of years ago at the Vaults. There was a tasting. Pip was there. And most of us being the people who are like on the management side of the society, have never tasted it. So that was one bottle opened, and I think it was like people had been working there for a decade, never got to try it. It's super rare, and I'll see one at auction once in a great while, rarely, but it's like an 8-year-old Glenfarclas. I want to say it's something like that. But it's just
it's funny. I don't want to sidetrack you. I know you have a second question, but I want to say I wanted to say this after the trailer. I've told John McShane this too. I have such an enormous amount of joy in listening to him say Pip's name when he says Pip. The way he just says it, it's just effervescent.
Yeah.
Pip.
Pep. Pep. He said Pep, and I noticed
Pep.
that. Yeah, Pip is quite the character too. What a life story. So the second question I was going to ask is listen, you feel free to. I'm just curious. So glad you're here to share more insight. But is there anything that maybe this is a harder question to ask? Or, excuse me, a harder question to answer. Is there anything that people should know in watching the film, like anything sort of any behind the scenes insights that something like that might have occurred, or something funny, or any little like Easter eggs, so to speak, in the film that exist?
Well, there probably are some little Easter eggs here and there that maybe wouldn't make sense to most people. Very sadly, one of our producers of our first film died while we were rolling out the first film, and this new series is all dedicated to his memory, Tim Sexton. And Tim was the biggest whiskey fan we know, and there's a few little Easter eggs for us in the film that we just picked shots that we knew he'd like. There's a couple of whiskey drams that we knew that he loved those drams.
Yeah, that's cool.
Tim loved Bricklady more than anything, but he also loved Glengarry, and so there's a couple of shots where we knew they were Glengarry shots, but only we know that. But it's still, I've never, because I know Tim never would have wanted us to be maudlin about it. It's a celebration of it. Like this one's for him, but some of the other stuff, like some of the real behind the scenes stuff isn't so much romantic on screen stuff as it was, like I was saying to you before we went live, we were one of the real challenges of making a documentary feature about a current topic. If I was making a film about the Romans, I wouldn't. The Roman Empire isn't going to change while I'm making the film, but the industry of independent bottling changes constantly.
Yeah,
and Gordon and MacPhail made a relatively enormous announcement about a year ago, and we had to scramble to sort of adjust the film to fit that, and but that kind of was fun. That led us down this rabbit hole of all these headlines. And we have one of our producers, Linda Bickett, is in Glasgow, and Linda's one of my old friends from when I was a student there. She went to the Library of Scotland and found all these archival headlines of all the closures when the mothballing was happened in the whiskey lock in the 80s, but also then when she went back about the new stuff about Gordon and MacPhail and about the industry that way. So that was always like this. To be honest with you, it was overwhelming at times. Like I'd wake up because I'm 8 hours behind everybody I'm working with in Scotland. So I wake up in the morning and I have 76 text messages from WhatsApp with links to here's everything they have at the Library of Scotland. And so then I have like, it's like, oh, I'm going to go get some coffee and have some breakfast. And I'll come back and I'll take a look at this.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. I mean, just the whole thing. And the Easter eggs are very personal. Yeah. I call them Easter eggs. Maybe that's not the appropriate term, but
yeah, but no, I mean, that's, yeah, sure. I mean, that's what we call them.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a couple of things like I said, you know, I'm in the film discreetly. There's a few of our Keith. Not only is Keith in the film, he's in the trailer that you just watched earlier. And there's a few other, you know, I know some of the other people that are drinking whiskeys and stuff in those, you know, that's just kind of stuff. They were, let's face it, it helps that they're available. If you know them and you say, hey, if I give you a free whiskey, can I film you drinking it? It's an easy way to get an extra.
What do you, Greg? I mean, it's fine. When we started this off, I introduced you as a whiskey expert. You claim to not be, and you so obviously are. But I mean, what is? Do you have a list of how do I phrase it? Like something you want to learn more about within Scotch whiskey specifically, or in Scotland? I mean, you've been around. You already gave us the what we call a flex by going to Bonaccord in like the 90s. By the way, for context, if anyone watching this isn't familiar, Bonaccord is a bar in Glasgow. It's like one of the best whiskey bars, I would say. One of the most legendary whiskey bars, Scotch whiskey bar in the world. Amazing place if you haven't been and you're over there. Do want to go there.
These days, their whiskey list is an iPad. If you ask for the whiskey list, they hand you an iPad. Like that's the amount of whiskey that they have. And I'm sorry, I lost track of the question. What was that? That was my flex on that.
That was my post-wandering dram question, which was totally over here. But I mean, anything you want to experience still in the Scotch whiskey industry in Scotland? Like what's unchecked on your list right now?
Well, I'll tell you. During the pandemic, I took and passed the level 1 certificate in at the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy. My plan is to do level 2. I haven't done it yet. I don't necessarily have plans to do level 3 because I just don't know that I've looked at what is required, and I don't know that the work to value ratio is right there for me, just because I'm not going to ever become a distiller, But that being said, one of the things I've been doing for the last few years is buying up casks every now and then when I can afford it and when the right casks present themselves. And I kind of maybe think I might become an independent bottler of sorts.
Okay.
And it's one of our producers, Nate Barlow, and I have talked a lot about becoming our own independent bottlers. And I don't know exactly what that would look like yet, because we keep changing our minds about where we want to do it, whether we want to do it there or whether we want to do it here.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is I'm curious to go to some of these places, some of these whiskey markets that I've not been to yet, and experience them new. As much as I think this last trip to Scotland that I was just on in March, that was my 18th trip to Scotland. Oh, so I'm pretty used to the place. I have a whiskey collection I keep in Linda's house in Glasgow. I refer to it as my Eastern collection. But that sounds at home. Yeah, that sounds much grander than it is. I think at this point I have 6 bottles at our house, but I used to have probably 2 dozen.
That's a collection.
But I've never been to Japan. I have been to Australia, but I've not been to Tassie. And so I want to go to these places and experience them with the eyes of a first timer. And I'm also really, really passionate about Irish whiskey. And this, I found one of the things that I have to do, because first and foremost, I'm a storyteller. Before I'm a filmmaker, I'm a storyteller. And one of the things I have to do is find the story before I can make the film. The original idea for The Water of Life was, let's tell the story of 6 distilleries that represent all of Scotland. Only after we shot the film did we realize, one of these stories is more interesting cinematically than the other 5. That has nothing to do with their whiskey. That has nothing to do with the quality of the people or the kindness of the people. It's drama, and drama alone. Yeah. And Bruichladdich has a very dramatic story, because they were closed, they were sold, they were bankrupt. There was a lot of drama. Balvenie I'm a huge Balvenie fan. I have a bottle here. I'm putting water in my whiskey. I have a little Balvenie sample.
Yeah.
But Balvenie there's no drama there. There never has been any drama there.
No,
They've
perfect.
So
perfect, like,
yeah. I always tell people when they ask me about Balvenie, like people that don't know the industry, I always say Balvenie is Lexus to Glenfiddich's Toyota.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And so, but one of the things that I'm curious about is is this story that I've discovered in Ireland that I think is a really compelling story. That's a great structural coat hanger to hang an entire film from for Irish whiskey, and that's going to be that's the film I can see the beginning, the middle, and the end at this point. Where, as much as I'm keen to do American whiskey, I have a device for that story that I know it's going to work. Indian whiskey, I'm starting to develop the device for that story. But Irish whiskey, I know the beginning, the middle, and the end. So, can you share the device, or is it too premature? No, I mean I kind of can. Irish whiskey almost collapsed. That's the bottom line. Is that Irish whiskey got to the point that there were two distilleries. Really, if you want to be honest, there were two distilleries. People say there were three, but they were Jameson owned everything except Bushmills, and that was it basically. And they've kind of rebuilt themselves from the early 90s up into a new industry where there's now, I think the last I heard, that was north of 50 distilleries now. And that's insane in that amount of time. But then the one hook that I found that I went and spent 2 weeks there with Carrie Moynihan for her podcast. And one of the things I learned on that trip was how many of these new distilleries are completely owned by really young people.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
And I've gotten to become really tight with the Irish whiskey historian Finan O'Connor, who's a great guy. And I don't know if you've ever met him or encountered Finan, but he's he's a brilliant guy, brilliant storyteller, and has forgotten more about Irish whiskey than anyone else has ever known. And Finan has really helped me fill in the sort of cracks and openings and holes in that. And, I just am so excited to use him as that device. And when I said we've already started shooting the Irish whiskey film, what we did is Finan's brother lives in LA. And so he was here visiting and we interviewed him. We just sat him down and interviewed him for like 3 hours. And then we're like, there you go. That's the groundwork for this film.
Yeah, I feel like the history, the collapse was like the American Prohibition years. Was that sort of the time?
It certainly started it, but I mean, it continued consolidating. And then that led to collapse where like there's an efficiency to be had where, well, why make Middleton here? Why don't we just make Jameson there? And, the closures and all of that stuff went on for decades and decades and decades. And they sort of lost their way. And then I love the idea that it was rediscovered by young people.
That is fascinating. I mean, distilling the Irish roots in distilling, like, yeah, there's no, you're talking about the drama of the Bruichladdich. Like, you're right. Ireland is the most dramatic of stories to be told, it feels like, in Dutch whiskey. Or
I can tell you
in whiskey, period.
I can tell you Finan's story that's going to become part of this film. This is therefore I don't mind saying this now because this is his story. Not while he was getting his PhD in history and in distilling, Finan discovered multiple. Irish whiskeys, like many American whiskeys, have a mash bill because they used oats, they used unmalted barley. They would use wheat, they would use rye, they would use different grains. It's not single malt. Pot stilled whiskey is not, Irish pot still is not single malt. So he discovered all of these ancient recipes that had been completely lost to time. And some of them, one of them, for example, was written on the back of a grocery receipt, handwritten on the back of a grocery receipt. And it was these women in, I think, Cork. It was either Cork or Clare.
Yeah.
It was one of the sea counties. But what he did is he reached out to new distilleries in each of those places and said, would you be interested in trying to recreate this whiskey with me? And so he recreated some of these whiskeys. It's like Frankenstein, and he's recreated some grains.
I mean, are they readily available grains, which is unique?
Yeah. Most of it, a lot of it is unmalted barley, green barley.
Yeah.
Green, and then a lot of it is oats.
Yeah.
There's some rye, there's some wheat. I think there might be some corn. But then the reasons behind those And then this sort of the way in which they're combined, the way in which they're distilled was completely unique in different regions within Ireland. And so he specifically only went to distilleries that were very close to physically where he found that those recipes were from.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So, and I can't wait for that whiskey. I have to get this film off the ground before that whiskey matures, because I don't have to be there right now because those barrels are just sitting in warehouses doing nothing. But eventually, probably within the next year and a half, those are going to become bottleable whiskeys.
Oh, and you want them available when the film is released?
Yeah, I want to be there. I want to be there because I want to film it and I want to drink it. So, selfishly, I want to drink it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love Ireland as well. I mean, this is for everybody. This is where we are. Well, I don't want to say we're off topic. This is the topic, but I just feel like the history is fascinating, and I don't know not as much about it. Like, I have friends in Ireland in the whiskey industry who have shared a lot with me. I've just picked up, bits and pieces of it, but I think the film would be amazing, and I'm looking forward to watching it. When we talk about this one, Independent Spirits, obviously it's my life, it's my world. It's in it. It's like a big family. I still learned a lot, by the way, from the film, even being in it myself. But that one, I think in particular, I can sit back and like pour whiskey and really absorb it, because it's similar, but like you said, it's a different market altogether.
Yeah.
So anyway, I want to wrap up, but I want to first of all just say thank you, Greg, for coming on, sharing your insight. You've been a great advocate of ours, and obviously congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, down below in the description is a link to watch the film. And if you are a society member and you order any of our festival bottlings this month, May, which we have we got like just over a week left, you can have free access to watch the film. Otherwise, you can just pay to stream the whole thing directly. And great reception so far. Fantastic film. I love the story you shared about just seeing everybody watch it together in the theater. That's really cool. And looking forward to doing our events, or rather our screenings, I should say, in September. And more information is coming around that, guys. So don't blow up the inbox asking for more. It's coming.
Well, you can blow up my inbox if you like. If you go to Friends of Water of Life Film, one of the things I'd love to hear is, I always ask people this: if you drink some whiskey while you're watching it, I want to hear if you like the film, of course, but I also want to know what you were drinking when you did it. Yeah,
and did you like it more or less with the whiskey? Well, probably more. I mean, I think it's like driving the car and listen to music. It's like it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Finish your thought. I was just
going to say something funny. When I ordered the Gathering here the other day, or the Wandering, sorry. When I ordered I've said the Gathering because that's the other bottle I have here is the Gathering bottle. Yeah. When I ordered the Wandering the other day, I got an email. They obviously, whoever processed my ordering recognized my name, and they wrote to me and they said, "Do you need a link to the movie, or are you good?"
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like, no, I'm good. You don't have to give me the link. I've seen it 175 times at least already. So,
well, we're straight shooters over here.
I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. Steve, it was Steve Hawley who wrote to me. Like, you don't need a link, do you? I said, no, I think I'm good.
Well, I should say thank you for your patronage and for ordering the bottle. Okay. We talked about it earlier. We don't have to talk about more, but anyway, there's a link below, you guys. You can go pick up the Wandering if you'd like. We got a few bottles left as of today, so
yeah, I love it. I have another one.
It's really good. Anyway, thank you, Greg.
All right, thank you.
For watching, and drop a comment if you have any questions, and I'll be sure to answer it. All right, cheers.